to 8 minutes. And yes. You don't need to write your names right now. I'll tell you about them after you have to write your names after it gets over. So do not write your names right now. The last name is Pearl. So after Pearl, please do not write any names. So Pearl Patel, you guys can write your names after the session ends. So kindly wait. I'll give you the instructions later on. Let's Pearl join. I'm admitting people right now. I request you all to kindly turn off your videos and yourself. Please turn off your video. Please turn off your video, sir. Turn off your video, sir. Yeah. So we have with us Advocate Hitesh Gupta, sir. So yes. Shall we start, ma'am? Nishtha, ma'am? Ma'am, actually you're mute. I'm sorry.
Hello. Yes, Ashika.
Okay. Okay. So I welcome you all today on behalf of CCJR on this webinar on lacuna in criminal investigation, which will be presented by Advocate Hitesh Gupta, sir. So before we start, I'd like to tell you all that if you have any questions at the end of the session, kindly put them into the chat box and I'll be asking sir the questions. And also, you've got to write your names at the end of the session so that we can give you certificates according to that. Not right now, at the end of the session. So I will request our coordinator, Nishtha ma'am, to introduce our guest today. So yeah, Nishtha ma'am.
A warm and graceful evening to our valued guests, management committee, dean sir, our valuable teachers, and my students, as well as one and all gathered over here. This task of introducing our guest of honor and speaker is a great privilege. I am profusely overjoyed to take this opportunity to introduce our guest of the day. Moreover, it is an honor rather more than a pleasure to welcome you all to this webinar. Advocate Hitesh Gupta ji is an esteemed criminal lawyer having an experience of more than 16 years in the field of law. He is currently practicing in the High Court of Gujarat and in the District Court of Vadodara. He has completed his LLB and LLM from Maharaji Saji Rao University of Vadodara. He is currently pursuing his PhD also on the topic criminal investigations in India. He has conducted session trials of murder, dacoity, anti-corruption cases, economic offense, cybercrime, and many other offenses and many other serious crimes all across India. He has also appeared in several high-profile cases and was one of the youngest lawyers to have appeared in CBI court in the high-profile encounters case. So we are honored that sir is with us here right now. Now over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Nishtha ji. To start up, I would say it's my privilege to be here and to give my opinion on as to how the criminal side of the investigation, which is one of the most crucial aspects, I would say, how investigations are conducted and what are the lacunas in these investigation aspects. The key factor, I would say, why crime is increasing day by day is perhaps the manner the crime which are reported are being investigated. Whatever as a lawyer we do in the courtrooms, they are the result of what is done by the investigating agencies at the time of conducting the investigation. Now, if we focus on the lacunas, as most of you who are attending this are students, are law students, I would like to focus and give the best of the example of Sushant Singh Rajput's case, which I am sure that most of you are right now focusing on, taking in interest on as law students also. First and foremost, when we talk of investigation, as we all know, police authorities are the person who are conducting criminal investigation. Now, the starting point of this investigation always remains as reporting of the crime. Once the alleged offense, once the crime is committed, subsequently, the reporting of the crime is very important. Now, reporting of crime is one thing, and registration of the offense under section 154 of Criminal Procedure Code is another thing. Suppose the crime is registered, meaning thereby the first information report is filed, the complaint is registered on the record of the concerned police station. That is one portion where cognizable offenses, when the cognizable offenses are committed, upon commission of the cognizable offense, police registers the offense and starts the investigation. However, the problem, the first and the foremost problem, I would say, starts from the very initiation of registration of the FIR. Police normally is reluctant in registration of the crime. So from the investigation point of view, the problem starts off from the very reporting. The crime is committed in the jurisdiction of a particular police station, be it even the smallest of the offense like theft. Even when the theft is committed and the concerned police station is approached, it hardly happens that immediately the theft report is converted into an FIR. So the first and foremost lacuna in any criminal investigation stands is the registration of the offense. Crime is already committed. Talking the same thing with the perception of Sushant Singh Rajput's case. There is a death. There are allegations that this is not a normal death. The victim family is approaching the concerned police station with a say that we are seeking investigation of this offense. But what police has done, as the Mumbai police, rather than considering that as a report of a cognizable offense and registering the offense, they were reluctant in registration of the FIR. And then the problem starts, because if the FIR is not registered, be it any kind of crime, if the FIR is not registered, that is the starting point of an injustice. The court is only going to decide the matter when the charge sheet will be concluded, the charge sheet will be filed after conclusion of the investigation, and the matter will be before the court. However, what happens is, because the crime is not registered and investigated thereafter, the family or the victim feels that there is injustice to me. I must tell you that there are numbers of rulings. The law is absolutely clear. Section 154 of CRPC is absolutely clear that once there is a report submitted to the concerned police station regarding registration of the offense, the cognizable offense, if it is disclosed, it has to be registered immediately. There is nothing in law, at least nothing in CRPC, which permits prior investigation of the offense, of a cognizable offense. It is only in cases where the offense is non-cognizable offense, then it is permitted that the investigation be done, as 154 is only applicable to offenses which are cognizable. Honorable Supreme Court as well as several high courts have numbers of time given these guidelines as to registration of the offense in cognizable offenses. The landmark judgment, I would say, came up in the year 2013, whereby in a case of Lalita Kumari, the Honorable Supreme Court categorically gave direction that when the cognizable offenses are reported, the FIR has to be registered. There were some exceptions given, like if it is a matrimonial case, then there can be a prior investigation. If there is a property dispute, there can be a prior investigation before registration of the FIR, but that too for a limited period of a week or 10 days. The prior investigation of a alleged cognizable offense cannot be for 15-20 days, a month or so. Based on such rulings of Honorable High Court and Supreme Court, even the Director General of Police, who is the head of execution of police authorities, there has been several notifications. So far as Gujarat Police is concerned, there have been even notifications to that effect, that once the cognizable offense is reported, there has to be an immediate registration of the FIR. However, this is not done. As I said, it is the starting point of an injustice and the biggest lacuna, followed by what the recourse is available. Then the person has to approach either the courts of law or the higher authorities. The Honorable Apex Court has gone to the extent of saying that if this is done, then there can be contempt proceedings also against the police who is not registering the FIR. But again, it is a long legal battle thereafter. So I always say that the police machinery, so far as investigation aspect is concerned, is supremo. If they decide that we want to conduct a particular investigation in a particular manner, they can make anybody an accused, and at the same point of time, they can conduct the investigation in such a manner that at the end of the trial, the person can be easily acquitted. So whatever happens is at the crucial point of conducting an investigation. There have been numbers of cases in India where everybody knows that yes, he is a man who everybody is aware of through media and through the news channels these days, that everybody is aware that this particular crime is committed, the accident took place, the person died at the spot, there are videos, there are evidences. However, at the end of the trial, the benefit is going to the accused. Why? Because our criminal jurisprudence states that let 99 actual accused persons be acquitted, but one innocent person should not be convicted. So this jurisprudence also gives ample power, I would say, to use the discretion by the police during the course of investigation itself. However, though there being no provision of prior investigation or before registration of the FIR, police does that very mechanically. Also, the core part which everybody talks about, that during the course of investigation, influence of media, that is the prime part, influence, political influence and corruption in police department. These are few things which further aggravates and influences the manner investigation is conducted. And we cannot rule out that whenever the investigation is influenced, it cannot be and it will never be a free and fair investigation. So, suppose now the offense is even registered, the investigation started, then also the problem doesn't end here. What subsequently happens, like I was giving the example of Sushant Singh Rajput's case, that Mumbai police did not register the offense. Maybe for all XYZ reasons, ultimately an FIR came to be registered by the local police of Bihar. The FIR was registered over there against all those persons whom the complainant was alleging. Now, in normal circumstances, when any FIR is registered at such place where the police, where the offense is not alleged to have been committed, the jurisdiction point of view if we talk of, the law permits that an FIR can be registered anywhere and criminal law can be set in motion by any person. It is not mandatory that only a victim of the crime or the family of the victim has to register the FIR. Any person who has knowledge of the crime committed can report the crime and set criminal law in motion. So, if such offense is registered at a place where the jurisdiction does not lie, suppose the crime is committed at Ahmedabad and a person residing at Vadodara or a person residing at Anand has knowledge of commission of that crime, then that crime can be reported at the nearest local police station. And once that is reported, the police can register that crime in their register, the FIR register, as zero number FIR it is said. And that same can be forwarded to the police station who is having powers to investigate and in the jurisdiction of which the offense is alleged to have been committed. Now this was the very contention taken before the petition which is pending with the Honorable Supreme Court, what the Mumbai police was stating, the alleged accused were stating, and in the meanwhile the investigation was thereafter forwarded to CBI, and now the CBI is conducting the investigation. But in the same perception, prior to this, what has happened that the FIR was never transferred to Mumbai by zero number. And the Bihar police conducted the investigation themselves. In such situation, the complainant would have to bring on record that the offense which is alleged to have been committed, there was a continuation of an offense and the jurisdiction lied even at the place where the offense is alleged to have been committed. All said and done, offense is registered, investigation is started, but again, the problem further is always there where the investigation is inter-district, interstate, the accused are residing at some other places, even then there are also some problems so far as investigation is concerned. Like what happened with Bihar police and Mumbai police. The local police normally doesn't cooperate the investigation being conducted by the other state police. It is identically the same when the offense is being investigated inter-district also. Suppose the Ahmedabad police is conducting an investigation and some facts are brought to the notice of Vadodara police. Perhaps the cooperation might not be the same. And it further creates issues when it is interstate. Like when the Bihar police was conducting the investigation and they reached Mumbai for conducting the investigation in Sushant Singh Rajput's case. The best of the efforts were made by Maharashtra police to see that they could not touch the evidences and they were curtailed for conducting the investigation. It is not that this happens only in such high profile cases. Even in cases normally which are not even reported, this is a very normal course where a investigation is conducted and subsequently some other state police is there. Such non-cooperation is a matter of routine so far as criminal investigation is concerned. The economic offenses which are committed, which we come across these days, phishing scams which are conducted. Now these phishing scams, most of the phishing scams where you are asked over your mobile phone, a call comes of some unknown person asking for your KYC details, for your banking details and all such phishing scams are normally being committed by accused who are residing in some other state. And hence, whenever such offenses are even reported to police, such offenses are not registered as an FIR. Because the police is aware of the problems that they are going to face when the investigation of such case is going to come. They will have to travel to some other state, seek cooperation from the other state police, and ultimately there will be some point where before they could touch the actual accused, the accused with the help of that local police might have fled to some other place. So the investigation will never conclude. And on the record of that police office where the offense is registered, the investigation will always stay as an incomplete investigation. And hence police prefers that it's better to not register. Let the crime have been committed, let there be a report also, but they will not register this offense. And that is where is the problem. And when it comes to reporting, then it is said that there is no allegation of such offense being committed in particular state because the FIR is not registered. So now thereafter, suppose the offense registered, investigation is conducted, investigation has started. I always say one thing. Because you all are law students, there are lawyers also who have joined. I always say one thing, that whenever it is said, there will be citizens who would be coming up, okay, our laws are British laws and we need to change laws, our law is not proper. I am a criminal lawyer. I have understood the criminal procedure code to the best of my abilities. What I feel, because it is an amended law, as per the new law, whatever was required is now covered in criminal procedure code, and regular amendments are also being made. So far as the investigation part is concerned, if these provisions are executed with the object, the very object why this law was incorporated, then I feel that there is nothing which is required to be further amended. The provisions of investigation are absolutely complete. The only problem rests is with the executing authorities, the police authorities. Even there is issues. So when the investigation, suppose the crime is registered, investigation is conducted, the problem also lies with people who are coming ahead for reporting the crimes. Suppose one person, one friend who has come to the knowledge that yes, this offense is committed and I am a witness to a particular murder. If one friend reports that, this version might not be supported by his closest of the friend who is also aware of that how the crime was committed. He might not prefer to become a witness to his best friend's complaint also. Now just think of where a friend doesn't support a friend's complaint, how a citizen or a neighbor is going to support in the same manner. So non-cooperation is also one key factor. Non-cooperation of vital witnesses, important witnesses who don't come ahead disclosing the true facts to the investigating agencies. In Sushant Singh Rajput's case, it is not that nobody is aware of as to what has happened. But until and unless the person who is having true knowledge comes before the police authorities, narrates the true facts, doesn't come under any kind of pressure, only then and then there will be proper investigation. But in our country, again a lacuna. I don't want to get into any police lafras. Why should I get myself involved? I have a family, I have a life. Today I would go to the police, I would report something, and tomorrow I would have to go to the court and narrate all the facts. The defense counsel will be cross-examining me as if I have committed the offense. All these thought process are always there in the mind of an eyewitness. And that eyewitness perhaps will never come before the police, and ultimately he will never be facing the trial also. And then what we do is complain that the accused is acquitted unnecessarily. We can speak openly in our groups, in the friend circle, that I am aware of that this offense was committed. But they do see this is what is our law. We can keep on criticizing our laws. But perhaps the duties which is required to be performed by every citizen, that is law. Under CRPC, there is provision that all such person who is having fact and knowledge of any kind of evidence which can help the prosecution is required to be disclosed. And when it is not done, injustice, improper investigation is followed. This is on the point of witnesses. Now, the most important part, so far as criminal investigation is concerned, is recovery and discovery of facts. Section 27 of Evidence Act. One of the most important and vital sections in Evidence Act, which is required to be strictly followed during the course of investigation. Section 27 is the only section of Evidence Act wherein the role of accused is admitted. Version of the accused, the evidence which is disclosed under section 27 is becoming a part of the charge sheet which can be used against the accused to convict him. No, this is but very, very technical section, very important, as well as the investigating officers are required to be very cautious while going through the provisions and the investigation on these routes. With my experiences, what I have come across, section 27 is discovery of facts, where suppose an accused is arrested and a dead body is buried somewhere which only is within the knowledge of that particular accused. After committing the murder, he has disposed of the body. Then only that accused can say where is that body. Now, law says there are provisions, there are precedents by the Honorable High Courts, Supreme Courts as to what is required to be followed. Section 27 says that whenever some facts are disclosed by the accused, it has to be seen that facts are brought on record by keeping all the essential ingredients in mind. Now, a Panchnama, section 27 Panchnama is always drawn. Two independent witnesses are required to be made present before the procedure of section 27 Panchnama starts. But again, the lacuna and the problem. The problem stays that normally when such Panchnama is done in a routine course by police, it is written in the police station. They just write the Panchnama, and on that ready Panchnama, on that written Panchnama, any person who was not actually present during this process would be called by the police, be it a chaiwala who is regularly visiting the police station for serving tea to the police officers, or a nearby shopkeeper who is there at the nearest police station, or some panwala or some auto rickshaw wala. They would be stopped by the police. Their signature will be taken on the ready Panchnama, and now that becomes a part of the record of the charge sheet. Now, obviously, when such person, such punch witness is going to come to the court, he is always going to say that yes, police has merely taken my signature. I don't know anything more than that. This is the core problem. That at the stage of criminal investigation, police did not perform the section 27 Panchnama properly, and the benefit straight away will go to the accused. So, even all these aspects, when the Panchnama is drawn, how the accused has to be asked to remain present, that time when the investigation is done, even the witnesses, the punch witnesses, they are also required to remain present. A preliminary Panchnama, primary Panchnama, before actually conducting, which is said a first part of the Panchnama, is required to be first done at the police station. That now we all have gathered here, the punch witnesses are been acquainted with the case, and the punch witnesses thereafter are being taken from one place to another place. This is what is required. And smallest of the aspect is required to be brought to the notice of the punch witness. And whatever is written, law says that normally the content has to be in the words of those punch witnesses. But again, because the punch witnesses are laymen or independent persons, not having knowledge of how the Panchnama is to be written, the Panchnama is normally written by some constable of the local police station. I would say, with all my experiences, that an IPS officer, a police commissioner or ACP or high rank police officer might not be aware of the essential ingredients which are required to be taken care of while drawing a section 27 Panchnama, but a police constable who has been regularly remaining present would be surely aware of that how this section 27 Panchnama is to be drawn and what are the points which are required to be taken care of. Everything is required to be noted, and while conducting this section 27 Panchnama, who is the leader? It is the accused who has to lead, who has to take everybody along with him. There will be accused who would be followed by the panchayat and the police. This is what is the process which is required to be done, and normally in most of the cases I would say there is a problem, there is a lacuna in the manner section 27 Panchnama is conducted. Not only the dead bodies, even the recovery of the weapon also. It is very important as to how the weapon also, because whenever the accused is arrested, it is not necessary that he would be possessing the same weapon which he has used for the commission of the crime. That weapon he might have thrown off somewhere, or he might have hid it somewhere. That is to be required to be recovered by a section 27 Panchnama. And if that Panchnama is not done in a proper manner, the benefit will go to the accused during the course of the trial. So even this is the way Panchnamas are done are also equally important. Then comes one again important part of a criminal trial, I would say, and the perception of criminal investigation is identification parade. Taste identification parade. Section 32 of Evidence Act covers this part of taste identification parade. The manner identification parade is to be conducted. There are several notifications and guidelines given, but again the problem remains the same, is the manner it is being executed. normally, as per law, suppose offense is committed by some unknown person. I was sitting in my office, some unknown assailants had come, had hit me badly. I am been taken to hospital. I am reporting the crime that some unknown persons came and this has happened with me. So thereafter, when the accused would be arrested, then I am required to identify these people. And what is required is a taste identification parade which is required to be conducted. And importantly, it is not that the taste identification parade is done before the police. This is to be done before the concerned magistrate. The executive magistrate is required to remain present, before whom the taste identification parade is done. And importantly, before such taste identification parade is conducted, we normally see in numbers of matters when media reporting is done, we always see that some mask is worn by the accused. And people always, the normal layman always say, okay, he has committed such a heinous crime, he should be exposed, his photograph should be shown to everybody that actually who is the person. But it is not shown for the reasons because it would affect the investigation. Until the taste identification parade is conducted, if the photographs or the videos of that particular accused is disclosed, then there will be no meaning of conducting taste identification parade subsequently, because the evidentiary value of such taste identification parade becomes zero. So even this aspect of investigation, that until the accused is in police custody, until the investigation is conducted, he is kept at the police station in such a manner that the witness can identify him before the magistrate at the right point of time, and they are not seen to each other. Now, this is even important with the aspect of implication of an innocent person in the offense. Now, suppose the person who actually had hit me in my office and I had reported the crime, he is not the same person who is arrested. So to conduct that fair investigation, if a wrong person is arrested and proper investigation is done, during the time of conducting the taste identification parade, I can fairly state that no, this is not the same person who was at my office, who has committed the offense. So this is the investigation which would not only prosecute or lay stones, the foundation stones of actually involving and prosecuting the person who has committed the crime, but at times even innocent person is not been falsely implicated, even that can be seen only at the right time of conducting the investigation. These days, one of the most important part, which is, I would say, is the future of investigation, is use of scientific methods of investigation. Very important. Forensic science laboratories are set up with the latest technologies, where brain mapping test, lie detection test, narco tests are being conducted. Narco analysis tests are also being done. Now, when all this investigation is done, any investigation which is done by way of scientific methods, use of scientific methods, it becomes very important to see whether law permits this or not. There are numbers of judgments which does not permit the use of scientific methods for the purpose of investigation. Consent of the accused is required. At times, even if the accused comes before the court stating that let there be my lie detection test, let there be some voice spectrography test, let there be a brain mapping test, even that cannot be done mechanically. Use until and unless there will be some laws which are enacted by the government that usage of scientific methods are permissible, then there will be fair chances that most of the trials would end in conviction. In all my experiences, I would say that more than 70-80% trials, though the accused is right, though the accused is the actual person who has committed the offense, is acquitted, or the benefit of the lack of evidence goes to that particular accused, mainly for the reasons that the investigation is not conducted in a proper manner. There are use of scientific techniques these days so far as handwriting evidence is concerned. Whenever there is disputes regarding documents, those documents are scientifically examined by the forensic science laboratories. But you would be surprised that our own Honorable High Court, there are judgments to that effect also, that even the forensic science laboratories can be influenced. Even the forensic science laboratories might be giving reports based on some kind of political or other influences also. So just think of the way investigation, when it is being conducted, is being influenced by one or the other way on every step, be it fear of citizens, be it corruption, be it political influence, and numbers of reasons. But whenever an officer conducts an investigation without any kind of influence, if an officer decides that I am not going to get politically motivated, I am not going to get politically influenced, I am not going to get into any kind of corrupt practice, be it complainant side or be it the accused side, in most of such cases, the result of such investigation ends into conviction. When we talk of investigation part, I would say that investigation does not always end into filing of charge sheet against the accused. Suppose there are mistake of facts or the complaint is filed with malified intentions, then at the end of the investigation, the police can also report that it is a false complaint. The report is to be done before the magistrate, concerned magistrate, and the concerned magistrate would ultimately take note of the report, and then it is for the magistrate to either accept that report as it is or send that matter for further investigation. However, any order which is passed by the magistrate, it is always and always after issuing notice to the complainant or the victim. He is always heard as to what is their say regarding the investigation which is conducted by the police. So role of complainant witnesses, punch witnesses, it is very crucial at the time of investigation. And if the investigation is based on documents, then proper investigation, proper search and seizure. Search and seizure is that finding a fact, seizing important documents, seizing important weapons, taking into the custody of the investigating agencies. So proper search seizure process, proper recovery discovery of the facts, all those aspects would help a lot in conducting a proper investigation. And once the investigation is completed, charge sheet is filed before the police, there are even scope which is left either by the complainant or investigating agency himself or even the accused to even challenge whatever has happened during the course of investigation. Accused has power, accused and complainant can approach the Honorable High Court under section 482 of Criminal Procedure Code, bringing to the notice of to the Honorable High Court, invoking inherent powers of Honorable High Court that this is what is left out, or this is why I am being wrongly implicated as an accused in the matter. And the Honorable High Court, using the inherent powers, can see as to what is right and what is wrong. Now, even it is very important that at the time of investigation, as I said, that if something is left out, which is mandatory and important at the time of investigation, if it is left out by police, like in a case of anti-corruption, before filing of charge sheet, sanction by the superior officer for charge sheeting the accused is mandatory under section 195 of Criminal Procedure Code. Whenever a government officer, whenever a charge sheet is filed against a government officer, gazetted officer, it is important to comply with section 195. Now, suppose that compliance is not done, then the benefit at the ultimately during the trial is going to again go to the accused. So this is why that where mandatory aspects are not being taken care of, the documents, the panchnamas are not done and drawn in a proper manner, the benefit will go to the accused. As what basically a criminal lawyer does in courts of law, he knows very well that when an accused will be convicted, only and only when all the charges are proved against him beyond any reasonable doubt. The word beyond any reasonable doubt is one of the most important aspects so far as criminal jurisprudence is concerned. If there is iota of doubt, the benefit of doubt goes to the accused. We normally see a criminal trial ending into an acquittal or a conviction, where the acquittal are more, the conviction is less. And in between an acquittal and conviction is the benefit of doubt. So a criminal lawyer, to the best of his abilities, only tries to shift the iota and brings in the iota of doubt. But one must also bear in mind that a criminal lawyer, he is performing the duty as a lawyer that no person should be convicted beyond any doubt, should not be convicted until and unless all the charges are proved with cogent evidences. So if there are some doubts which are raised by the defense and those doubts are genuine doubts, then the benefit is to be entitled to this accused. But proper documentation, collection of proper documents always enhances and helps the investigation and proving the case in the courts of law. It is always said that a person can lie, but a document cannot. Any document which is either forged or collected during the course of investigation or created during the course of investigation, if suppose during the course of trial, a document which is properly executed, a panchnama which is properly executed, suppose tomorrow the investigating officer has passed away, has died before his deposition is recorded by the court, if that panchnama is drawn in a proper manner, that document can become the basis of conviction. So, what important parts are that recovery, discovery, how search and seizure is done, whether the investigation is influenced or not, whether corruption is there in the investigation or not, and proper supervision by the higher authorities at the right point of time also is equally important whenever a criminal investigation is conducted. So this is my perception, with all my experiences on the practicality or as to where the investigation lacks, where the problems are being faced even by the investigating agencies. This is an overview of the lacunas which are there in the investigation. I would ask Nishtaji and the host also that now we can have an open session also if anybody wants to have any queries and questions.
Yes, sir. Yes. So it was an amazing session, sir. Like it is so different what we learn in theory, like theoretically. Practical life is so different and corrupted actually. So yeah. So yeah, if anyone has a doubt or questions, you can drop in the chat box. I'll ask sir right away. So please. Okay, Pearl is asking, can you explain the section 27 Panchnama?
Section 27 is the Provision of Evidence Act, wherein the facts which are normally, whenever the version which is disclosed by the accused, the statement of the accused is not admissible in law. Statement of accused before police has zero admissibility. If the accused is stating something, if there is disclosure of such facts which are exclusively within the knowledge of that accused, then the investigating officer is required to draw a panchnama. In that panchnama, the person who is an accused, normally whenever he is at the police station, he is inside the lockup. So, first, two independent punch witnesses who are independent witnesses, normal citizens, they would be called upon by the investigating officer, and the investigating officer would make the panchas understand that what is the offense and what is required to be done. Like the offense is committed by the accused at a particular place. Now, where the dead body is lying right now is only within the knowledge of that accused. So then the accused will be called upon. He would be shown to the punch witnesses. The punch witnesses would be made acquainted with all the facts, and a primary panchnama will be drawn at the police station. Then the accused will be made to sit and lead the journey. He would be taking the police and the panchas to the place and thereafter the dead bodies would be recovered. All those process which is done is at the instance of the accused person, and this is what is a complete Panchnama. All the aspects you have left from the police station, which route you took, which vehicle you had used, all those aspects are noted in the Panchnama, and ultimately how the dead bodies were recovered or how the weapon was recovered, also that is brought on record by way of a Panchnama. That is section 27 Panchnama. Normally the problem appears that the accused is sitting in some other vehicle, the punch witnesses are sitting in some other vehicle, the police is doing its work by its own motion. So now if the accused is not leading, then the problem will certainly arise. So this is how a section 27 Panchnama is done.
Okay, there's another question from Satyajit Sonagra. What is the current position of narco test if the accused is voluntarily willing to do it?
In that case, normally a writ petition would be required to be invoked, a writ jurisdiction would be required to be invoked. He directly approaching, because there is no law, as of now there is no law in India which permits conducting of scientific tests on the accused. Consent is mandatory as per the precedents set by the courts of law. However, even if consented, a procedure is required to be followed. But suppose a accused volunteers himself that he wants to undergo the test, then the only recourse as of now left to him is invoking Article 21 of the Constitution, that his basic constitutional right is been infringed, and hence he can approach under Article 226 before the Honorable High Court directly.
Okay, so there's another question from Nayan Gupta. When the site of crime is far away from the jurisdiction where the matter is heard, how the analysis that crime place? Okay, so when the site of crime is far away from the jurisdiction where the matter is heard, how is the analysis of crime taken place? That's what the question is.
Okay, I got him well. See what happens, suppose there is a continuation of the offense, like in a matrimonial case. In cases of section 498A of IPC, if the crime is committed, no matter the matrimonial house of the female can be at any other state or any other city, but the offense, the territorial jurisdiction, his question basically is pertaining to territorial jurisdiction. So territorial jurisdiction would lie even to the place where the female used to reside with the parents. So the paternal house will also have the jurisdiction. But in cases of murder, suppose a murder has taken place at a particular place, then only that police who is having jurisdiction of that particular area will be able to investigate the case and no other person. So if such crime is reported at any other place, then the offense will be registered with 0 number FIR, and that 0 number FIR will be sent to the concerned police station having jurisdiction over them.
Okay, so we'll have a few more questions.
Yeah, definitely. I'm okay with it, please.
Okay, so the next question is from Rakesh Sharma. Don't you think the tampering of evidence also hinders the investigation?
Yes, definitely. But tampering of the evidence normally comes after the collection of the evidence. Once the evidence is collected and that evidence is not collected in a proper manner, there, if suppose a weapon is seized by police and after doing the seizure process, it is not properly sealed in the presence of the Panchnamas, the way it is required to be sealed, then non-performance of the duty by the police in a proper manner would in fact create a further hindrance, and the scope is left by the investigating officer that let there be tampering of the evidences. And even that is an offense. Suppose there is tampering of evidence. It is an offense. If it is done, once it is collected, and even if it is done by the police also, there are instances, there are number of cases where investigating agencies, the police agencies who had conducted the investigation had subsequently tempered the evidence with the purpose of helping the accused. Suppose a politically motivated investigation is there, a high profile person, maybe an MP, MLA, minister is arraigned as an accused, or a high ranked police officer is arraigned as an accused. To help such accused, there can be tampering possible. If we cannot rule out the situation, the identical situation in Sushant Singh Rajput's case, that there because there has been a period which has gone now, there could have been a probability of tampering of evidences also. But if that tampering is brought to the notice of the court, there can be prosecution against that person also, be it police officer or be it anybody. There can be prosecution, a fresh prosecution for tampering of evidence also.
Okay, we have another question from Nilang Soni. How important is the investigation of crime scene by investigation authorities, and are there any steps taken by police authorities to enhance such investigation details?
Yeah, this is called topography in our terminology. It is very important in every criminal trial, the Panchnama of scene of offense, where the alleged offense is said to have taken place. It is very important that a proper Panchnama is done of that place. It is these days, even police goes to the extent of bringing on expert persons at the place of offense. Even FSL officers, forensic science laboratory officers, are also brought at the scene of offense. In the presence of these forensic officers, the Panchnama is drawn, and when that is done, even in crucial investigation, the videography is also done these days by the officers. So precautions are taken while doing this investigation. But again, the lacuna, if I draw the attention on the lacuna part also, suppose the videography is done of the scene of offense and the Panchnama is required to be drawn, then the punch witnesses, the two independent witnesses who are cited as the punch witness, are not seen in the videography which is being done. Then again, it will create an evidence which will be much helpful at the time of trial to the accused. Yes.
Yeah, so sorry. So we have Ankit. A person took a copy of his own application before the trial. He then tampered with it multiple places and then submitted before the appellate court after affixing the true copy stamp. Later, the same person also submitted the correct copy but never informed the appellate court about it. Would it still be an offense of forgery? Should I repeat
Absolutely,
the question?
yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. No, I am reading the same question.
Okay.
Absolutely, it would amount to forgery, an offense under section 465. And if it is with a particular purpose of even not only falsifying the evidences, first and foremost, prosecution can even be initiated if not fresh FIR is registered. A prosecution under section 340 can be initiated, read with section 195 of IPC, can be initiated against such person for tampering the evidences and tampering with the record of the court. But even an FIR can be, since it is taken from the court, it is in the possession of the person and then used by him in the appellate court, then if that court is, the true facts are narrated before the court, before whom it is produced, the appellate court themselves can take the cognizance of this matter and report registration of the FIR. Very recently, I would say just before 15 days, a very identical case has happened, again in a high profile case of an IAS officer, where the one judgment of Honorable Sessions Court of Delhi has been used in the High Court by tempering a bail order. There was no such bail order, and it is portrayed as if a bail order has been passed upon a co-accused and is being used before the Honorable High Court. So this happens very often, but certainly it would make out a case under forgery, IPC 465.
Okay. We have another question from Devanshi. Okay. Yeah, ma'am. Okay. Should I ask the question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Can police take in custody the objects or electronic devices of the victim even if the FIR is not filed, as happened in Sushant Singh Rajput's case?
Definitely. See, so far as Sushant Singh Rajput's case is concerned nowadays, one thing is very much clear. Now the CBI is investigating the case post registration of the FIR. However, when the preliminary investigation is conducted, even while conducting preliminary investigation prior to registration of the FIR, any kind of objects, electronic devices, electronic evidences can be collected, but the provisions of CRPC is still required to be followed. The provisions regarding search and seizure, which are there under CRPC, are still required to be followed as if the FIR is registered. A proper Panchnama is required to be drawn as to when, in whose presence, in what manner it has been collected, and if suppose it is collected from some private person, then a seizure memo is also required to be issued while collecting that and making that particular device a piece of evidence of the criminal investigation.
Okay, so we have a question from Dhairya.
Lalita Kumari's case, Daria.
As you referred in starting.
Yes, Lalita Kumari's case was one case wherein it was brought to the notice of Honorable Supreme Court, where 154 Criminal Procedure Code states that whenever an offence, a cognizable offence is disclosed, FIR is required to be registered immediately. Normally, police is not registering the FIR. So when this fact was brought to the notice of the Honorable Apex Court, the Apex Court has given this ruling, these guidelines in Lalita Kumari's case. This case has become one landmark case for registration, immediate registration of FIR in all cognizable cases. Even if you do Google or Indian Kanun, you can, it is a very landmark judgment, and I feel that every law student must necessarily go through this Lalita Kumari's judgment once.
Sir, I have a question sent to me privately, so I guess you will not be able to see the question.
Fine. Absolutely.
Yeah. Can police take in custody the object? Okay, this one is done, so I guess it is repeated. Another question is, so how do we deal with the problems since such lacunas make cases like those Arushi Talwar and Nirbhaya either dismissed or sometimes leading us to nothing? So, like, what is the solution to it as such?
See, first and foremost, if we are reporting a crime, being vigilant is the key fact. You need to be vigilant as to how the investigation is being conducted. You need to be vigilant as to who is arrested. And until and unless the person, the victim, is vigilant enough at the present scenario, nothing is going to improve. However, we are living in a country where the laws are wonderful. I am a defense lawyer, I am a criminal lawyer, but that doesn't mean that I only see laws with the perception of defense. There are cases of conviction. Numbers of cases are there where conviction does lie. But because the basic criminal jurisprudence, the very basis of our Indian constitution is the concept of beyond any reasonable doubt. So when there would be iota of doubt, there will be clear fairness of investigation. When there will be cases where eyewitness is coming ahead without any kind of fear. So every citizen of this country, until and unless we the people perform our duty fairly, we don't have any right to complain regarding acquittal, regarding non-convictions. No, we don't have any right. It is basically the problem lies within the citizens itself. So if we perform the duties, we are the first person to perform the duty to report the crime. Subsequent duties lie with the investigating agencies who are conducting the investigation. Yeah.
So, sir, that's it. These were the questions we had for today, and it was such a wonderful session. Like, it was an eye opener for us, and yeah, we'll keep these things in mind and try to change it in near future as far as possible. So, yeah, now
These are practicalities of law, I would say. These
Yeah.
are such practical parts wherein what are, even as a law student, what was taught to me when I was a law student and when I actually came into the courts of law, I had seen that what's the difference.
right.
And if we are aware of, criminal cases these days are reported almost on every news channels. Almost there are, every day we see one or the other serials also on televisions. There are now online, on YouTube also we can see numbers of such clippings. So crimes are committed everywhere. The only part is as to how we understand and look at the commission of the crime from the legal prospects. Until and unless, as a lawyer, as a law student, we start understanding that now since this FIR is registered, how and what police is doing. Now just catch one case, just pick up one case of investigation like the recent Sushant Singh case and keep on following as to the smallest of the aspect, you will understand the practical aspect of criminal procedure code.
So, sir, before we end this session, I would, first of all, I would request everyone who is left to write their names and email IDs for the certificates in the chat box. And please write your names and email IDs for sure, because we'll not be able to email you the certificates. So, okay, I would like to request our dean in charge, Dr. Malay Patel, to say a few words about the session we had today. Malay, sir.
Well, I am an odd man in the group, sir. Actually, it was indeed and fantastic to hear you. Basically, I was totally unaware of these kind of actually aspects which are totally practical in nature. Wonderful. Basically, I would like to congratulate Nishtha ma'am, Sanjay sir, basically, and the whole Center of Criminal Justice and Reforms to have such kind of wonderful webinar. At best, basically, I would also like to congratulate Hitesh ji, who actually took some time from his busy schedule actually to come and enrich the knowledge of our student. Sir, we would like you to be a part of us particularly. Actually, we would like to have more and more such sessions particularly, which would be there. Okay, and I'm sure Center for Criminal Justice and Reform would take it further. Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. It would be a pleasure, sir. I will be always there.
Now, I would like to ask our director of CCJR, Dr. Sanjay Pandey, to say a few words. Sanjay sir.
Good evening. Our learned chief guest, Hitesh Gupta sir, Dean sir, and faculty members and my beloved students. As sir has raised that a practical aspect, in the light of that, I would like to say that Dean of Harvard Law School, Professor Roscoe Pound, wrote an article or a book that is Law in Books and Law in Action. So I thought many a time that teachers always believe are used to teach only law in books, and advocates only understand and teach law in action. But sir, today you have completed both the things. You have fulfilled this gap, and you have uh, narrowed down the gap between law in books and law in action on the topic of criminal investigation. Sir, you have investigated and inquired the lacuna of criminal investigation in India in such a beautiful way or scholarly way that there is no further word to add something. But we know that, the teachers are always greedy to grab the chances to speak, always in such gathering. Therefore, I would like to take the privilege to speak on this point only 1 minute. Sir, here, if you see, there is the doctrine of separation of power, that is the legislature, executive, and judiciary, or you may say Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh. And all these components always support. Suppose there is the legislature, they delegate their power, and executive make the rules, regulation. And judiciary, if the executive are lacking something, then judiciary by judicial activism complete that gap, fulfill that gap. In the light of criminal investigation, sir, and my dear student, there is also a doctrine of separation of power in the light note that investigation procedure that is conducted by police, then prosecution and judiciary. Sir, in case of legislature, executive, and judiciary, if legislature has not done something, executive and judiciary can fulfill that gap. But here in criminal investigation, if the investigation procedure is not completing in proper way, if there is the lacuna in criminal investigation, then prosecution and judiciary cannot fulfill this gap. It is my humble suggestion. So, sir, you have raised, and sir, it is said in India that criminal investigation is like a stage of true horror story in our country, and whole country is the witness of Aarushi Talwar case. So, sir, thank you very much that you have raised such questions and enlightened us on such burning topic of the criminal law, that is the investigation. So really we have enlightened, and whenever the time will permit, sir, we will always request you to come on this forum, Center for Criminal Justice and Reform, and please enlighten us, sir. Thank you. Good evening.
With pleasure. I will always be there.
Okay,
So
sir.
finally, I would like to request our co-director of CCJR, Ms. Nishtha Agrawal, to deliver the vote of thanks. And yeah, so thank you so much. It was an amazing session. Nishtha, ma'am, over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Arshika. So it's my pleasure to have been asked to propose a vote of thanks on this occasion. I, Nishita Agrawal, co-director of CCJR, extend my most sincere thanks to Almighty. I would like to thank the management of Karnavati University for all the support and giving this opportunity, golden opportunity, to organize this webinar. At the outset, I would like to thank our chief guest and resource person, Advocate Hitesh Hadaji. We are really enlightened with your knowledge and presence, sir. I extend a hearty vote of thanks to Gupta ji, who spared his time from his busy schedule to grace this occasion. I would like to thank our Dean, Dr. Malay Patel, sir, who have been the backbone of this webinar. I would like to thank our extended thanks to Dr. Sanjay Pandey, sir, for their enormous cooperation in the organization of this gala webinar. I would also like to thank Sagar Modi team and Parmesh for the extended support. However, webinar like this cannot happen overnight. The wheels start rolling weeks ago. It requires planning and a bird's eye for details. We have been fortunate enough to be backed by a team of very motivated and dedicated students of our college who know their job and are very result oriented. So thank you, Harshika, Rakesh, Anjali, and Harshit for all the extended support. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Gupta ji,
Thank
for
you all.
this auspicious
sir. Thank
and
you.
valuable words. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, ma'am. And thank you so much, sir, to have, it was a pleasure to have you, and hopefully we'll meet soon. And hopefully we'll know more things about, what goes on in the practical field of criminal law. So thank you so much to everyone who for coming here, for attending the webinar on lacuna in criminal investigation. And hopefully we'll meet soon, and take care and stay home and stay safe. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. See you.
I hope everyone has written their names in the chat box for the certificates. If you're not, then please write it right now. I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. See you soon. Bye.
मैंने भी पार्टिसिपेट किया, एक सर्टिफिकेट मुझे भी दे देना.
Okay.
Participation certificate.
So the session was very good, I feel.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Nishtha, ma'am. Thank you, team CCJR.
Thank you so much, sir. Okay.
CCGR team rock. Thank you, Sanjay sir. Thank you so much.
Bye bye.
Okay. Now
Okay,
I want
bye-bye,
to
guys.
leave. Okay.